You know you should not buy it. Part of you, a real, genuine, sincere part of you, does not want to. And yet, you buy it anyway. And then it happens again. And again. And again. And the question that haunts you, the one you have asked yourself 100 times lying awake at night, is this. Why? Why can I not stop? If you have ever looked at your bank account at the end of the month and genuinely could not explain where the money went, this video is for you. If you have ever promised yourself, sincerely, with full intention, that this month would be different, and then found yourself in the exact same place, this video is for you. If you have ever felt the shame of knowing better and still doing it, that specific, quiet shame that you do not talk about with anyone, this video is for you. Because what drives emotional spending is not what most people think it is. It is not weakness. It is not lack of discipline. It is not that you do not care about your future. It is something far deeper than any of those things. And by the end of this video, you will understand it completely. And understanding it, as we said in the last video, is where everything begins to change. Here is the first thing you need to understand. When you make an emotional purchase, a spontaneous buy, an impulse, something you did not plan and cannot fully justify, you are not buying the thing. You are buying a feeling. You are buying relief from something that was pressing on you before you opened your wallet. You are buying a momentary escape from something, stress, emptiness, sadness, boredom, anxiety, loneliness, that had been sitting in your chest and needed somewhere to go. The item is just the vehicle. The emotion is the engine. Research from the Journal of Consumer Psychology found that up to 62% of people engage in what they call retail therapy, spending specifically to manage or shift an emotional state. Not to acquire something they need. Not to invest in something valuable. To feel better. Right now. In this moment. And here is what makes this so difficult to see clearly: it works. Not forever. Not even for long. But in the moment of purchase, something real happens inside your brain. And that something real is the reason the cycle is so hard to break. Your brain has a reward system. It was designed, over hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, to help you survive. To motivate you to find food, build shelter, form connection, avoid danger. And the way it does this is through a chemical called dopamine. When your brain anticipates a reward, not when it receives one, but when it anticipates one, dopamine floods through a pathway called the mesolimbic system. It creates a feeling of excitement, of wanting, of being pulled forward toward something. This is the same system that lights up when you are hungry and you smell food. When you are lonely and someone you care about calls. When you set a goal and take the first step toward it. It is one of the most powerful systems in the human brain. Now here is where spending enters the picture. Neuroscience studies using brain imaging, fMRI scans, have shown that people with compulsive spending tendencies show heightened activity in the nucleus accumbens and the orbitofrontal cortex when exposed to shopping cues. These are the exact same regions that light up in addiction. The anticipation of a purchase, browsing, scrolling, adding to cart, triggers a dopamine surge. And that surge feels like relief. Like excitement. Like something lifting. And your brain learns this. Your brain files it under, when you feel bad, this makes you feel better. Neuroscience studies describe it precisely this way: the purchase is not the goal. Relief is the goal. Stress decreases. Control returns. Mood improves. Then guilt follows. Then the emotional state returns. Then the loop repeats. This is not a budgeting failure. This is emotional regulation through consumption. And it has been happening in your brain long before you ever knew what it was called. Now let us go deeper. Because emotional spending is not one thing. It is not one feeling dressed in one outfit. There are 7 core emotional triggers that drive most spending, and you will recognize every single one of them. Not from reading about someone else. From your own life. Trigger 1. Stress. Nearly 1/3 of people, 29%, engage in what researchers now call doom spending. Spending specifically to cope with stress and anxiety. Not because they want what they are buying. Because the act of buying gives their overwhelmed nervous system a moment of relief. When life feels out of control, when work is heavy, when relationships are difficult, when the future feels uncertain, a purchase creates the illusion of control. A small decision, made by you, for you. In a world that feels like it is making decisions for you. Trigger 2. Emptiness. There is a kind of hunger that food cannot satisfy. A kind of loneliness that company does not always reach. A kind of hollow feeling, quiet, persistent, hard to name, that lives somewhere behind the ribs. And for many people, spending reaches toward that hollow place. The excitement of acquiring something new creates a temporary sense of fullness. Of being given something. Of being cared for, even if you are the one doing the buying. But the hollow place remains. Trigger 3. Sadness. When we are sad, we seek comfort. This is human and ancient and completely understandable. And sometimes, especially when other comforts feel out of reach, spending becomes the comfort we reach for. Research describes it precisely. Purchasing during sadness provides a temporary sense of self-worth, care, and positive experience that counteracts the emotional deficit. You are not buying the item. You are buying the feeling of being cared for. Trigger 4. Boredom. Boredom is more powerful than most people realize. It is not simply the absence of things to do. It is the brain's signal that it is understimulated and that it wants a hit of something. Anything. In a world where purchasing is one click away, 24 hours a day, on a device you carry in your pocket, boredom and spending have become neurologically linked. The scroll. The browse. The add to cart. It fills the gap instantly. Until the gap returns. Trigger 5. Reward. This one is quieter and harder to see, because it feels positive. Because it wears the costume of something healthy. I worked hard this week. I deserve this. It has been a difficult month. I am allowed to treat myself. I sacrificed a lot. This is just one thing. And all of those things may be true. The work was real. The sacrifice was real. The difficult month was real. But the brain is using reward spending to compensate for something deeper, a sense of deprivation, of not being seen, of not having had enough, that a purchase cannot actually fill. Trigger 6. Anxiety. Anxiety-driven spending often disguises itself as practicality. As being responsible. As preparation. Buying things to prepare for situations that may never come. Stockpiling. Upgrading to avoid imagined future problems. The spending feels rational because it is framed as protection. But the driver is anxiety, not genuine need. And anxiety, when fed through spending, does not reduce. It grows. Because every purchase teaches the anxious brain that danger is real, and that more preparation is needed. Trigger 7. Low self-worth. This is the deepest one. And the one least often named out loud. When someone was raised in an environment where money was used as a substitute for love, where things were given instead of presents, where purchases were how care was expressed, they can grow up with a deep, unconscious equation: being given things means I matter. And so they give things to themselves. Because somewhere beneath the purchase is a message they are trying to send to the part of themselves that still does not quite feel worthy. And a new item, for one brief moment, feels like evidence. You will see yourself in some of these triggers. Perhaps more than one. Perhaps all 7 at different moments. This is not a character flaw. It is a coping system, built in response to real emotions, real circumstances, real pain. Now you understand why telling someone who emotionally spends to simply budget better is like telling someone who cannot breathe to simply inhale more. The advice is not wrong. It is just aimed at the wrong thing entirely. 96% of people, nearly every single person surveyed, admit to impulse buying. Even as 88% say they feel stressed about money. Even as 71% express genuine regret about their spending habits. Think about that for a moment. Almost everyone knows. Almost everyone regrets. Almost everyone continues. This is not a knowledge problem. This is an emotional regulation problem. The budget sits on the table. The emotion sits in the chest. And when those two things come into conflict, emotion wins. Almost every single time. Because you cannot think your way out of a feeling. You can only feel your way through it. Here is the question that changes everything. Not what did you buy? Not how much did it cost? But what were you feeling in the 10 minutes before you bought it? Because the purchase is the symptom. The emotion is the signal. And beneath the emotion, there is always an unmet need. A need for rest that was never taken. A need for connection that was not available. A need for recognition that nobody provided. A need for safety that still does not feel guaranteed. These needs are real. They are not weaknesses. They are the evidence of a life that has asked a great deal of you, and sometimes given very little back. And the painful truth is this: no purchase has ever met one of these needs permanently. Not one. In the history of human spending. Because the purchase speaks to the surface. And the need lives in the depths. And now let me say something that may surprise you. Even if you were emotionally completely healthy, even if you had no unresolved needs, no childhood wounds, no unprocessed stress, you would still be in danger of this loop. Because the consumer environment you live in was not built to help you spend wisely. It was built with extraordinary intelligence, enormous resources, and decades of psychological research to exploit the exact mechanisms we have just discussed. The dopamine anticipation loop. The anxiety trigger. The emptiness response. The reward justification. Algorithms that learn your emotional patterns and show you products when you are most vulnerable. One-click buying that removes the friction between impulse and purchase. Limited offers and countdown timers that activate your scarcity brain. Notifications timed to land when your stress levels are highest. This is not an accident. This is engineering. And the average consumer in 2024 spends an estimated $3,381 per year on impulse buys they did not plan for and mostly do not need. You are not failing in a neutral environment. You are losing in a rigged one. You are not someone who cannot control yourself. You are someone whose brain learned, in a very understandable way, for very real reasons, to use spending as a tool for managing the emotional weight of being alive. That is not a character flaw. It is a deeply human response to a deeply human problem. The work is not to shame yourself out of it. The work is to understand it so completely, so honestly, so clearly, without flinching, that the pattern begins to lose its automatic quality. And to slowly, gradually, imperfectly, replace it with something that actually meets the need. Rest when you are tired. Connection when you are lonely. Stillness when you are overwhelmed. And money, in the bank, building quietly, growing steadily, as evidence of the new story you are writing. Subscribe to WealthRootMind. Because every video on this channel goes one layer deeper. In the next video, we are going to talk about the black tax. The financial weight that falls on the person who made it out. The silent pressure of carrying a whole family on one salary. And what it costs, not just financially, but psychologically. That one will hit differently. the root of wealth is never money. It is always, always, the mind. We will see you in the next one.